The following is a presentation of the St. Louis Chess Club.
Welcome everybody to the last stretch of this wonderful 2022 Spring Chess Classic. We are now on round number 8. I am Grandmaster Alejandro Ramirez here to bring you all of the action with my good colleague, Cristian Chirila.
Alejandro, always a pleasure to be doing commentary on these amazing games from this beautiful studio here at the St. Louis Chess Club. We are on the final stretch, so what do we have, Alejandro?
Not too much left here in this tournament. It has been quite an exciting one. It's just shown the level of chess that we have here around the country. We've been able to bring players from the collegiate level, from the junior level, even from the young teenagers participating in this event, and they've all shown an incredible amount of firepower. Let's take a look at where they stand after 7 rounds. We have a clear leader in the A group. It's Robson with 5 points, followed very, very closely by Sevion and Nishnik. Meanwhile, Niemann and Hakobian, they let the foot off the gas a little bit, especially Aram, and found themselves still with a decent score there, up with 4 points.
Tied for 6th position, we have Jeffrey Shong and Darius Zvierch, who both drew their games yesterday, 3.5 points out of 7. In 8th position, we have Alex Lenderman with 2.5 points. In 9th position, Camille Dragoon barely allowed Sevion, his opponent from yesterday's game, to escape with a draw. He only stands at 2 points, and Mikhail Antipov, who just simply cannot find his form in this event, 1.5 points out of 7. And how about the B group, Alejandro?
We have still a clear leader, as we got this result totally wrong when we signed off yesterday. We thought that Repka was going to go down in flames, and he just pulled the game out of the garbage can, turned it around, and actually ended up winning that game against Christopher Yu. And because of that, sits very comfortably, or well, perhaps not that comfortably, but does sit at the top with 6 points. And the reason he's not that comfortable is because of this young man, very, very young. I mean, Mishra, at only 13 years of age, he is trailing by only a full point, and they're actually playing each other. We'll obviously have that as a key matchup of the day. Meanwhile, Sam Hanin is in 3rd place with 4 points. Elshan Moria-Diabadi with 3.5, and Christopher Yu also with 3.5. Not fully satisfied with those tournaments.
And tied for 6th position, we have JJ Limarandi, Arman Mikhaelian, and actually JJ Limarandi and Arman Mikhaelian with 3 points apiece. And tied for 8th position, we have Robert Hungaski, who lost yesterday, as well as Titas Stremavicius. In the last place, we have Harshit Raja, who lost a very painful rook and bishop versus rook endgame yesterday against Sam Hanin.
Yeah, those endgames are always tough. You know that you can hold them, but practically it's not so easy, especially with the time pressure. You sit there for 6 hours suffering, and you don't get that half point. It really feels terrible. But we've seen that a lot here at the chess club. I think my most clear memory of a rook bishop versus rook was Nazi Paikidze playing against Anna Satonsky. He had the U.S. Chess Championship, the U.S. Women's Championship, and she lost on move 49. Lost on move 49 out of that defense of 50 moves.
Max Payne in chess.
I don't think it gets worse than that.
Payne.
That is Max Payne, absolutely. But let's take a look at what we have for you in the tournament's format. It's a 210 player round robins, classical chess, 90 minutes or 40 moves. You get an extra 30 seconds per move from move 1, and of course, once you reach move 40, you get an extra 30 minutes.
Also, the players may not mutually agree to a draw in less than 40 moves. They can find that repetition, they can find that perpetual check, but they cannot mutually agree to a draw. This is going to ensure that we have a very combative event on our hands. And how about the schedule, Alejandro?
It's very easy. We have 2 rounds left. The 8th one has already started. We are well underway, and of course, commentary starts 2.5 hours afterwards, which applies also for tomorrow. But check it out. Tomorrow, it's at 11 a.m., not at 1 p.m. that the round starts. Therefore, our commentary will start at 1:30 p.m., so don't be late. That is done to accommodate playoffs, if necessary, in either the A or B group for 1st place. Currently, no playoffs would be needed, but let's check out if the leaders can be caught.
I have to wake up very early tomorrow, Alejandro. Don't forget, you can join the discussion on social media at #SpringChessClassic on Twitter. Also, this show is broadcast on both YouTube and Twitch. And on Twitch, you can also donate. Tell us a little bit more about that, Alejandro.
We take donations, sub we have bits. For every $75 that we get, we'll be able to sponsor a full semester of chess programming for a child. This is a great initiative here at the St. Louis Chess Club. Remember that we take players all the way from the scholastic level to the very elite, passing through the spring and winter chess classics. So please help us out with that. The $75 definitely goes a long way.
And how about the pairings for today's round, Alejandro?
Let's take a look at that. What we have in store for you. Camille Dragoon is playing against Jeffrey Shong. Ilya Nishnik against Hakobian would definitely be the game of the day if we didn't have a more interesting one for you later down on those rows. Hans Niemann is playing against Zvierch, which is a very interesting game. Alex Lenderman against Mishra, Antipov, two players that really did not find their form fully in this tournament. But the game of the day, without a doubt, that's Sam Sevion against Ray Robson. 4.5 points for Sam. 5 points for Ray. That is striking distance. The pressure is on Sam to win with the white pieces if he wants to take this tournament. This is a traditional matchup here at the St. Louis Chess Club. Sam Sevion and Ray Robson have been qualifying for the U.S. Championship for what feels forever. I think Ray said that he's played something like 12 or 13 U.S. Championships in a row. And since 2013, Sevion's been there. So despite how young these two players are, they're veterans here at the St. Louis Chess Club and always provide really, really fun chess. We'll actually be probably jumping to this game as soon as we're done with the B pairings because it is crucial to the standings. And the B pairings also has an absolutely crucial game. Yes, all of the others are very interesting. Christopher Yu against Sam Hanin, Hongaski is playing Harshit, Mikhailan is playing Ali Marandi, Maria Diabati is playing Stramavicius. But our eyes are going to be focused on this one. Chris Repka has a commanding 6 points, is playing the youngster, the rising star. Everybody is talking about him. It's Abhimanyu Mishra with 13 years of age. He can currently catch Chris Repka by defeating him with the black pieces. That is, of course, a very tall order, especially as slippery as Chris has been throughout the entire tournament. Cristian, we have two crucial games going on upstairs. Take us through one of them.
Absolutely, Alejandro. Actually, I'm going to take you through both of them because right now, both of those are exploding. Let's start with the A group, the battle between Sam Sevion and Ray Robson. And comparing these 4 players, 2 situations, both in A group and the B group for the leadership position. Well, the players with the white pieces, the players hunting the leaders are kind of in the same situation. They have to win this game. Specifically, Sam Sevion is right now playing with the white pieces. He's half a point behind Ray Robson, and tomorrow he's playing with the black pieces. It's very, very difficult to win with the black pieces. Abhimanyu, of course, he's 1 point behind Chris Repka, so he really needs to win that game. Let's see what is happening. We're going to start with the game between Sam Sevion and Ray Robson. And we see Sam opening up with the English c4, e5, probably the best response against c4, depending on your style. Knight to c3, knight to f6, knight to f3, and now we've seen quite a few approaches in this tournament. One of the most interesting one was actually this move e4, which Sam Sevion uncorked in round number 1 against Ilya Nishnik. Instead of that, Ray Robson plays the move knight to c6. This is the typical way to deal with this situation, the 4 knights English. And now we see g3, d5, and the transition in what looks like a reversed Sicilian. Bishop to g2, bishop to c5, castle, castle, d3, h6, knight takes d5, queen takes d5, bishop to d2 again. There are a lot of ways in which both players can play at this juncture in the position, and we see a5 allowing any sort of discovery attacks with this bishop on g2. But the thing is, this knight doesn't have where to go with a huge impact. You can go to g5, but that's just only going to allow you to transfer the knight more towards the center. That's definitely an option, right? I'm just going to go back. You can go to e4, and now we have a very typical position. But instead of that, White decides to keep the tension on this diagonal with this move bishop to c3, which in fact creates the threat of taking on e5, and that's going to be a discovery attack against the queen. You have to retreat the queen right now, which he does. He plays queen to e6, knight to d2, a4, knight c4, f6, and now we have more of a maneuvering game. Both parties are going to try to find the ideal squares for their pieces. We see this knight coming from f3 all the way to c4 on the other side, but more importantly, opening up the action of the fianchetto bishop on g2. Very, very important piece for white. Rook to d8, queen to d2, queen to e7, opening the avenue for this bishop so that black can finish its development. Queen to c2, rook to a6, bishop takes c6, b takes c6. Of course, if you take with the rook, I can take on a4, and this is the trade-off right now. So white gave up probably the best piece that he has in the position. In return for that, he gathered one pawn. That's a pretty nice advantage. Nevertheless, the problem is that your light squares around the king are becoming weaker and weaker with every move, and black is potentially going to be able to land the bishop on h3, then try to transfer the queen on the long diagonal with immediate threats of checkmate on g2. So black definitely has a lot of compensation for the lost pawn. Instead of that, Ray Robson decided to take on c6 with the pawn, preserve the control over this pawn on a4. This rook is defending the pawn on a4. And now we see this move, knight to a5, a very intriguing approach, opening up the c file. And at this juncture, Ray Robson blundered horrendously with this move, bishop to h3, which in fact loses the game on the spot. Because white has this simple retreat, bishop to d2 or bishop to e1, a very easy move to miss. This retreating move, backwards moves, are very easy to miss. He played the move bishop to d2. Actually, he played the move bishop to e1, which is in fact the most precise move in the position. We were looking at this position with Alejandro, and we were considering bishop to d2 to be the much more practical approach, of course. You see both moves, but it looks like bishop d2 is a bit more active. Nevertheless, it seems like Sam Sevion understands this is even a better move than bishop to d2, and right now, black is completely lost. Your bishop on c5 is under threat, but more importantly, I also have this threat of queen to c4, a double attack. So for example, if you try to retreat with the bishop on d6, I'm going to go queen to c4. Then I'm going to pick up the rook on a6. You're going to pick up my rook on f1. I'm going to pick up your bishop, and I'm going to be a piece up at the end of this whole story. So right now, you probably have to take on f1, but I can just simply capture back on f1. How do you defend the bishop on c5? Well, you can do rook to d5, right? It seems like this one solves both problems. You defend the bishop on c5, but also queen to c4 is no longer a double attack. Forget about that. I'm going to distract this rook, force it off the d5 square. You have to go to d4, then I'm just going to pick up the bishop, which is going to lead to a transition into a completely winning endgame for white. Two pieces for the rook, but much more important is that I don't have any weaknesses as white. You're probably going to get this pawn on d3, but that's not going to mean much. My pawn structure is still intact. I'm going to start collecting your pawns. I'm going to take with the knight on c6, then retreat, then I'm going to put more pressure on c7. This is just completely losing. Bishop to d2, bishop to e1 was played, rook to b6, and now I can just simply take. Completely winning. Sam Sevion might be taking the sole lead in this event with a victory against Ray Robson. And while we were talking about this game, it seems like Ilya Nishnik has won his game against Aram Hakobian. Alejandro, maybe you will show that. But let's take a look at what happened in the other key matchup of the round, the one between Chris Repka and Abhimanyu Mishra, because, well, this one is not going great for the leader either. Let's see how we got there. d4, d5, c4, c6, we have the Slav. By the way, Abhimanyu has been playing this particular variation every single game in this event with the black pieces. Everybody opened up with the move d4. Everybody went into this particular variation. And if you remember, Alejandro, well, I'm sure you remember, because it was the game of your student, Ali Marandi. In this position, he played this move, a g3, which was my student's choice as well.
Oh, what a coincidence, yeah. I mean, stealing my notes. What is this?
I told you not to tell me anything. D takes c4, bishop to g2. Now we have this variation, knight d7, castle. b5, the same thing that was played in that particular game. And Ali Marandi started with this move e4, which is a very normal move, natural move. You're trying to grab more space in the center. Also, you're going to play the move e5, which is going to force the knights to land on more or less an awkward position, and then your king side is going to be a bit weakened. We saw what that led to in that game. That was a complete destruction by white. Instead of that, Chris Repka plays this move knight to g5, immediately opening up this diagonal, attacking the pawn on c6. Black has to find a way to defend. Of course, if you go bishop to b7, I can just simply take on b5, and this is going to be, well, pretty problematic for black, because the pawns are equal. If you try to recapture on b5, then you're going to lose the light square bishop, and the light square bishop is extremely important. This is going to allow my light square bishop to become the dominant force in the position. So that's not acceptable for black. Queen to b6 was played b3, take. And by the way, this is all some sort of obscure theory. Bishop to f4, bishop to b7, a4, attacking the pawn on b5, a6, keeping the tension there. And now a big mistake by Chris Repka, and I will definitely have a talk with him after the game, because we looked at this position at home. We looked at this position at home maybe like 20 minutes before the round started, and knight c4 was the move. Even I remember, I did not go through all of the lines with him. He was supposed to repeat his lines. I remember seeing this knight c4. Now, the key idea behind it is that right now if you go h6, I can take on e6, which leads to a wild position that favors white, because you take, I take. Now I have a huge threat of playing knight to d6, which is going to lead to a completely winning, devastating attack for white. You have to take on e4. Now I'm just simply going to take back. Not going to be able to castle as black. Your king is going to be weak forever, and I have a consistent attack for the next 10 15 moves as white. This is not good news, and the engine agrees with this as well. Instead of that, he played the move knight g4. Now the difference is that right now black can just simply castle. And by the way, if you go knight c4 and you castle, the same problem arises in the position. Knight takes e6. So what you have to do, instead of castle, you have to play h6 or take on e4. Now, after knight g4, I don't have to take on e4. I don't have to exchange one pair of knights. I'm just simply going to go castle, which happened in the game. And this actually, right now, is just a slightly better position for black.
Right, the pawn.
A pawn is a pawn, and it's very important that a pair of knights is off the board so that the c file can be opened up and I can continue my pressure on this pawn on c6. Right now, the position is kind of awkward for white's pieces, and we got into this situation. Knight to g4, a very powerful move. Rook to f1, bishop takes f3, g takes f3, knight to e5. Now the king, without the assistance of the light square bishop around it, it becomes very, very weak. And after knight takes f3, king to g2, queen to b7, queen to e3, now black is just breaking through. This knight is going to be lost, which it was. And this, to be honest, is just a completely losing position. Black will have to go to c8, defend the entrance on b8, and this is going to be all she wrote.
Yeah.
This move is
piece
on the board, an extra piece, absolutely no compensation. Unfortunately for Chris Repka, for the leader in this event, I don't see this being salvageable.
No, a piece is a piece, and it has still a couple of practical problems. The pawn on a7 is very annoying, but it's so much extra material that you imagine.
Too much.
Yeah, it's too much. Let's take a look at what's going on in games from Group A. We do have a victor already, as Ilya Nishnik has defeated Aram Hakobian, and it all really stems from this position. It's kind of a weird one, as you can see that this king actually is on f6, and it proves to be a crucial part of the game. Now, the engines, as I was looking at it while you were explaining those games, Cristian, say that after rook c8, white's a bit better, but not that much. But rook d2 apparently was a big mistake, and it was based on a miscalculation by Aram, which is rare. He actually is a fantastic calculator, and I'm not entirely sure what it is that he missed. Knight c3 is very obvious. This is the entire point of white. You threaten this knight e4 check, It also defends the pawn on f2 because of knight e4 check.
Okay, bishop c2.
And bishop c2 check, king c1. Bishop c2 is really bad, by the way. Bishop queen c1, bishop rook takes. And so far, this is not so difficult to calculate. And bishop e4 was played. Bishop e4 is a very natural move because you attack the bishop. You cannot take on e4 because check picks up the rook. So you have to defend this guy, and it only has one square, a4. Now, this would be already awkward enough for me to not to consider it. But there is a killing blow already. The move bishop takes b7, again, vacates the square on e4. So knight e4 check is a huge issue. But I'm also taking the rook directly on a8. And you cannot actually solve both problems. If you play check on c2, as was played in the game, then after the move king b1, this actually threatens a full piece. Because knight takes a4, rook takes c5, knight takes c5 saves the knight.
So much geometry.
Yeah, so let me put the geometry here. I actually don't know if it's the only winning move. I think even retreating the bishop is winning. But let's not get bogged down on details. This is good enough. You have to take on c5 because your rook on c2 is hanging. And at the end of the day, the knight on c5 supports the bishop on b7. And black ends up down a piece. So after king b1, there's nothing better than rook takes c3. But this is a full exchange. And at this level of chess, I mean, it's a trivial win. Not to mention that it's not like black's position is very good. And black fluttered around for a couple of more minutes, but there's just no saving this position actually resigned after king e7. So a very uncharacteristic miscalculation here by Aram Hakobian from Webster University, and basically gifting his opponent a full point, and an important one for the standings. Lili has had a fantastic tournament and is looking at what's happening in that Sevion game against Robson and seeing if he can still fight for first place.
And I do believe Ilya is still within the Webster team in some capacity.
Yeah, I'm not entirely sure. I think he's assistant coach, or he's
Yes.
in some capacity still works for Webster University from where he graduated a couple of years ago.
But these two players know each other very well.
Yes.
So let's take a look actually at another very important game of the round, the one between Hans Niemann and Darius Zvierch.
Absolutely.
We have a Rui Lopez on the board, bishop to b5, a6, knight to f6, castle. A very typical Rui Lopez, bishop to e7, rook to e1. And by the way, just to mention, Darius wrote two very extensive books on the Rui Lopez, covering absolutely everything, so his knowledge is top-notch. b5, bishop to b3, castle, h3, bishop to d7, d3. d5, e takes d5, knight takes d5, knight to d2. Now, you can take on e5. The problem is that after knight to d4, this position has been overanalyzed. Everybody knows exactly what to do, and in general, it ends up in an equal position.
Yeah, some sort of perpetual.
Yes, yes. It's a very long line, perpetual, typical Marshall style Rui Lopez. Instead of that, White decides to go knight to d2, f6, c3, taking control of the d4 square, and also preparing this move, bishop to c2. Now, what is this bishop doing on c2? I'm going to support d4, and that is going to open up my diagonal, the b1, h7 diagonal, and I'm going to try to create some sort of an attack on that diagonal. Let's see how that played out. Knight to e4, queen to d7, knight to h4, queen to h5, queen to e8, queen to g4. We see this dance of the queen on h5 going to g4, then landing all the way to f3. Knight to f4, take on f4, e takes f4, and right now already it seems like black is taking over. Why, you might ask? Because you can just simply take on f4. Well, the problem is, once you take on f4, this knight on h4, and this knight on h4 anyway is a huge problem for White's position because it's on the side, it's on the rim. You don't have this move knight to f5. You would love to land the knight on f5. That would be very thematic and very good for your position. Unfortunately, you cannot do that. And I like what black did defending all the light squares on the king side. This queen is nicely protecting this diagonal because you can imagine, let's just put a couple of moves on the board. Let's assume this queen is not here. If you go queen to d7, boom, knight to g6, that's a checkmate in one move, right? So I really like what Darius did with this bishop on c8, this queen on e8, controlling all the important light squares. And now we see queen takes f4. He did go for it. He did give up a piece. And unfortunately for Hans, it doesn't seem like this is enough compensation. Black has full control over the light squares. Now it has a dominant bishop with an opponent on d1, but quite a passive opponent, at least for the moment. Bishop to f3, queen to f5, take, king to h1, knight to c4. The transition into an endgame can only benefit black because he is the one with the extra material. And right now, after bishop takes c4, well, it just seems. By the way, I'm not 100% sure if I like this move, bishop takes e4.
I mean, I know I don't like it.
There you go.
I don't know why I would give this
Take it
bishop
over
up.
from here, Alejandro. Explain to us why you don't like this move.
Right.
Bishop
Let me get up to this position, and I have it up on the board. It comes down to conversion, and if I had to say what is Dariush's weakness in chess, it would probably be conversion. He gets all these kind of positions where he's clearly better or almost winning, but it feels like he makes his life very hard. And I don't really know what this knight is threatening to do, because if you go to c5, I think I would rather chop it off with the bishop on e7 and keep this bishop on c8 alive so that I can trade it for the bishop on e4. The problem is that when you take on e4 and you take back, I think with the rook, you have this double attack. It's not a huge deal because this pawn on h4 is not the biggest factor in the position. But the main thing is this bishop on f3 in many situations, it doesn't have a way to be stopped. There's nothing that's going to be stopping this bishop. And later on, you can imagine there's bishop b7, take on a6. Now, is this enough for white? Obviously not. A piece is a piece. This knight on c4 is monstrous. You might actually get another pawn, and you might have 3 pawns for the piece, but it still feels on the verge of winning for the black side. But not on the verge, already having won his game today, we have Ilya Nishnik, who defeated Aram Hakobian.
Ilya, first of all, big congratulations. You two know each other. You both, well, you graduated from Webster. I'm not sure what your capacity at Webster is right now, but you know your opponent, Aram Hakobian, who is still a Webster student. How did you approach this game?
Well, as we can see by the result of the opening phase, I failed greatly. I've mixed up all of my home preparation and actually got into a slightly dubious position out of the opening. But yeah, I know that Aram is probably one of the very few people who actually works a lot on the opening phase of the game, and I wasn't really hoping to get anything concrete, any advantage out of the opening. I just wanted to get a playable position, which I miserably failed to do so. As we can see, at this point in the game, I think maybe I have slight pressure just because of the difference in bishops. So my bishop is pretty active. After my next move, knight d4, it gets out.
Looks like some sort of a Catalan bishop, but with a king on the other side.
Yeah, exactly. I'm not. Yeah, it's a really funny looking Catalan structure. But yeah, it felt like I have a little bit of something, and I think Aram probably didn't think it was enough because he was a little bit careless, and I think this bishop a4 move was what gave me something concrete, an advantage that I can already be working with. And yeah, so Aram just kept approaching really carelessly, and after rook c5 he I'm not sure how much better I am after rook c5, but as we could see from the game, the line that Aram went for was losing by force, unfortunately. And yeah, there's really not much to say there. What he might have missed is, yeah, if he goes rook d2. Rook d2 is already as Engine points out, there's a double question mark because black cannot avoid losing material. So I suppose black had to go into a defensive and try to defend the b7 pawn right now, which would probably be still okay. But once again, black got quite a few unnecessary weaknesses for themselves with their last couple of moves, such as king f6 and e5.
Yeah, I think we were looking at the move rook c8.
Oh, interesting.
As
so
the best way, yeah.
What happens if I just take the pawn? Is the rook coming to c2?
Probably rook c2.
It actually goes check.
Oh.
You don't really want to go this way?
I thought king c1 actually, because then rook c7, knight c3, and maybe I missed out on some draw. Oh no, actually bishop d3, bishop g2 and knight a4. But this is not over, is it? We can
also bishop d3. Can you go rook d1?
There's king d2 as well. This actually this might just be a draw. No, knight d5. This loses.
Oh yeah.
This might be just a draw if black takes on c3 though, which is kind of upsetting. Yeah. So in the end, king d2, knight takes c3. If b sieges bishop c4, this might not be enough to win. I assume. Or maybe even e4.
Maybe even e4, and I'm wondering who's better here.
No, okay, no way can black be better. I have bishop f1 always. So.
That's true.
Yeah, I think I'm still trying to win, but definitely, black can build some kind of fortress here.
But even either way, it seems that the compensation is pretty logical.
Right, but obviously when you get in a completely equal position out of the opening, you're not looking to give your opponent any benefits such as material advantage or positional advantage. So that's understandable why Aram was trying to force things into a forced draw and unfortunately blundered. I think what he blundered was, so after knight c3, bishop c2, king c1, rook takes f2. Bishop e4, so over here, if you go back one move, instead of bishop a4, I thought, at first, I myself thought that knight a4 makes a draw, which unfortunately doesn't work because of knight d5. So now, this very important check wins me a piece, because my rook comes down and takes the bishop on c2,
Right.
So that was a blunder, and unfortunately, there is nothing better for black than what Aram did, I believe, which is to go into this endgame down in exchange, but that's just a completely losing endgame.
Yeah, it's not even just down the exchange; it's also positionally lost.
Yeah, it is a lot of open files. I have pawn majority in the queen side. I have all my pieces right there. It's just everything just works out for me, and yeah, it was really really heartbreaking way to lose for Aram, but yeah. It happens.
You are the sole leader, at least until the other games are finished. It does look like Sam Sevion might be converting that game into a full point. That's going to have you guys as co-leaders going into the final game. Who are you playing the final game?
I'm playing Ray. We're going to have a very exciting 2 final games because Sam is going to be playing Jeffrey as black as well, so we'll see how it goes.
And you're going to be playing Ray as black
as well, yes. So we both, I assume we both will try to hold our ground, and let's see what happens. I hold no pressure. I'm already way overperforming than what I've kind of expected myself to do in this tournament. So whatever happens, I'm happy.
And by the way, we did get a word that Jeffrey won his game.
Oh, okay, nice. So he's
trending up.
Exactly. So he's 1 point behind, but he still has a shot to join us if he wins his last game. Yeah, that's nice.
Well, Ilya, a very exciting round to come. We wish you good luck in that one.
Thank you, Johan. Thank you, Alejandro.
I like the way that this tournament is finishing up. Some of the leaders facing each other in round 9. What else can we ask for from a round robin? Sometimes we get lucky and we get those fun matchups where they are playing for all the marbles. Let's take a quick look at what's going on in the A group, which seems to be a very bloody round today. Go around the horn very quickly. Sam Sevion is currently up a piece against Ray Robson. Let's just really quickly update what happened in this game. Ray actually played rook b6, gave up the full bishop on c5, and is hoping against hope for some compensation here. But it is a piece. Even though you will have 2 pawns and maybe even connected passed pawns if you take on e1, they're only connected technically on c5 and d3. They're actually completely isolated from each other. And as soon as you start blockading this guy with bishop d2, and at some point going f3, king f2, a piece is a piece, and there's really not that much activity for the black side. None of the tactics really work out for you. I expect Sam to convert this very comfortably. Meanwhile, Ilya did win his game. Dariusz seems to be in a winning position against Hans Niemann, but still some work to be done in that one, especially because he's very low on time. Alex Lenderman and Mishra Antipov are playing an endgame in which white is clearly better, but it is a rook endgame in which black has a lot of activity. Off the top of my head, I cannot really claim if this is a draw or a win for white, because black is on the verge of capturing the pawn on g2 and getting some material back because of it. And finally, we do have the result of the game between Dragoon and Jeffrey Shong. It was a very strange game in many ways. Hopefully we get Jeffrey in a little bit later to analyze it. But suffice to say that the final position, let me get to it. The final position makes quite the impression on you, as white is not even down material, actually, is could be up a pawn if he takes on a5. But it's just collapsing on every single direction. The king on e1 should not be on e1. Why are you in the center? Why don't you have any pawn defenses? There's a pawn coming to d3, forking everybody. You cannot capture on d4. e5 is hanging. You're left wondering why these pawns are on g4 and h4, and why the queen side is also collapsing with the move bishop takes b4. So pretty much everything is going here for black, and it is not a mystery why Kamil decided to give up this position. So a rough tournament here for the Polish player, one of the bulwarks of the UT-RGV, University of Texas Rio Grande Valley collegiate chess team for the past many years. Definitely a strong opponent, does a lot of work in chess, has had a rough year, dropping out of the 2600 club, And this tournament, it really has not gone his way. Let's look at Group B. We have, of course, some important matchups, so let's go really quickly through them, as I don't want to leave them abandoned. This is Christopher Yu against Sam Khanin. Sam Khanin is currently in a clear third place, but I think he's...
Not anymore after this game.
I think he's pretty dead here, right?
He's completely dead.
I mean, these are 3 connected passed pawns, and if I just take and F5,
push him, baby.
Push him, baby, and it's not going to last very long, right? You go here, you go there, and you promote somebody. Somebody will promote. And the counterplay for black is non-existent. Yeah, this is over. So Christopher Yu will rake in that victory. Robert Hungask is playing against Roger Harshit. This one is not as clear as the previous one, but still you have to think that black is winning in this one. He has the better rooks in many senses, and he has an extra pawn, and it's hard for white to coordinate with his rook on g2 to creating a real pressure. Arman Mikhailian is playing against JJ Ali Morandi. You have to prefer white in this position. This rook on c7 is quite nicely placed. This bishop on b7, it's a bit passive and consistently needs defense. But how much better is white? I don't really know. You have problems with b2. His king on h4 is also not leaving a great impression. I don't really know how much better, if better, white is. The more I analyze the position, the more I'm wondering if what I'm saying is true. You do have some threat with rook f5. I assume this is a threat. Although you still have rook f6 in so many lines. He actually played rook f6 immediately. Which was played just to get out of these ideas. And to finish very quickly, Ansar Morgadiabadi has a bit of a mess on the position against Titus Stramavicius. Initially, somehow I feel I like black, but I think we need to analyze that a little deeper. And Chris Repka against Abhimanyu Mishra. Well, one side has a horse, the other side does not have a horse. Therefore, the side with the horse will win.
Look, if he survives this one, the guy has 9 lives. Maybe more than the cat. Maybe more than the cat. But we are indeed with a very happy victor of the round. There is Jeffrey Shong. Jeffrey, first of all, welcome back to the studio. You started off blazing hot, 2 victories. After that, you cooled off with 2 losses with the white pieces. How would you assess your tournament up to this point?
Yeah, I mean, it kind of seems like I didn't ever fully recover from the round 3 loss, because yeah, at some point I was really feeling quite good during that game, and all of a sudden he turned the tables, and I ended up losing. So yeah, it's been a really difficult event for me, but just hoping to finish on a good note.
Well, definitely a good note was today. Let's look at that game and see how you finished your opponent off.
Yeah, it felt like his position got bad and bad and bad and bad, but I couldn't really figure out where it started getting bad.
Well, first of all, I think this g4, I mean, I know it's an idea, but it felt a little bit more risky for him, because he can never really castle long. That's the main issue, because I'm going to hit him with b5, b4. And then in general, when I put knight on e6, it's hard for me to imagine his attack really getting going.
Right, and after g4, knight e6, f3, b5, it seemed like e4 actually made your life a little bit easier, allowing you to get to that king on e1.
Yeah, it's a fair point, but on the other hand, I'm not sure what else to suggest for him, because he can play, you know, something quiet like bishop f2.
Sorry about that.
Maybe king f2? No, king f2 just loses.
Yeah, king f2 just loses.
I'm trying to get the king to g2. somehow.
But yeah, I mean, in general, his king's never going to find safety anywhere, right? So I think at this point he should just try to follow his plan. But after e4, I was actually expecting him to take with the knight.
Right.
So knight e4. I thought this was his idea. And I would go bishop e7, and then one critical line, I think, is if he takes everything on f6 and tries to take on c6. Because, okay, this gets kind of concrete. I don't really want to play bishop a6. So I was trying to calculate bishop d7, I think.
Bishop d7 looks very tempting, the idea,
Queen
of course.
d7, knight d4. Yeah, queen f3, long castle, I wasn't sure, but knight d4. I mean.
Defends both. But you got this very cool knight d4. Let's put that on the board.
I wasn't sure about it, but...
it's a funny position, huh?
Yeah, because I've got rook a8 as also coming fast, so maybe it's just good for me.
Yeah,
so if you try to castle as well.
Which way?
Short.
Thing is, even this position
Right,
might be...
if I want to, at the very least. But
this might just be totally lost, right? I don't think you're stopping queen h4.
Yeah.
Queen b2, yeah.
Yeah, it should be queen b4, rook a8. Okay, yeah,
Yeah.
should be, yes.
So
So yeah, maybe if this doesn't work for him, then he has to try, instead of, okay, he can't take everything on f6, I guess. Maybe bishop. Okay, I'm definitely better. Like if bishop f2, I can, play knight d5 or something.
right.
It's still, yeah, this long-term issue with white's king, I think.
Yeah, at the very least, does not look like a pretty position for the white side. But better than taking with the pawn, I think, because it did seem that at this point his position, it really starts to collapse.
I think he did play resourcefully. Like he made it tough for me to get in c5 initially. Like if we continue on. Yeah, bishop e4, I think he has to go, and then, yeah, I believe what I did was correct, but maybe there are alternatives also. Yeah, this. Yeah, so now there's some interesting lines. So my main point is after d5. So I have two options. I think queen e5, bishop h7 gets messy though, so I'm not sure about this. Like king h8, d6. But I was planning b3, which I think he was afraid of this. And I think he has to go to b1.
Yeah, you need to keep an eye on this bishop,
Right,
Because
right.
if queen e5, you need to be defending the bishop, and you also need the diagonal tempo.
Yeah, exactly.
So
So
queen
now, I think my idea was knight d4, because queen e5, bishop g3, so yeah, knight d4. And then, so, okay, the main point is, let's say he takes with the bishop on d4 and plays d6. Yeah, I take, he takes. And the funny thing is, I might even just play a move like queen b8, because the knight on a4 was trapped, at the very least, so I'm sure that I'm getting back the material, and then his rooks are disconnected.
It really does not look like white surviving this.
Yeah.
Right. All right. But instead he
So-
played rook c1.
Yeah, I think rook c1 was a good try. And then I like bishop c6. So now again b3 is threatened. But I thought here he had to try g5, whether or not it worked or not, just to go for it. Because what he wants is if I go b3, queen b1, I'm not actually that happy to take this knight, because he goes gh. And then, I don't know, maybe now I think he's fighting somehow. So,
Could be also a little bit of smoke, no?
yeah, maybe, but okay.
Some d5 coming. That knight has to
Yeah,
go out from e6.
if I can go bishop c6, then and it works, then he's lost.
d6,
But
d5.
yeah, I was assuming that maybe d5.
Yeah, d5, and you have to do something like knight e5.
Right.
But maybe it does get a bit messy. I don't want to give up the bishop, though. Why am I giving up material? What if I just go back?
Should be fine.
Yeah, that's like I want to see if white has an
Still
actual
d5.
Yeah,
threat.
I wanted something with rook g1 or I don't know.
Yeah, rook g1, but I can take this guy, right? Start simplifying the position.
Take 6. Yeah, it should. I mean, bishop. Yeah, okay.
It is a
should,
piece.
It should be. It should be winning, but maybe.
yeah. But
maybe he
it's
can
messy,
try
right?
it, Yeah.
So he played b3, and it seemed like after that there was just no way
Yes.
back for him.
Right. Here after queen b7, it's very clear cut. Yeah.
Yeah, and then this position is just over. Well, a nice bounce back. I'm sure that you were looking forward to that win, eluding you for a few rounds. You're a 1 point away, or we expect you to be 1 point away from the leaders going into the last round. Going all out?
You're in fact
Probably.
playing one of the leaders.
Wait, so Sam's winning? Or?
Sam is
winning.
completely
Oh,
winning,
okay.
yes. And we can pull up that game. I assume this is winning. Let me see what's going on. White has, again, one of those positions where white has a horse. The opponent does not have a horse. And that's how we evaluate this one.
That's a full piece.
That's a full piece, right?
Yeah.
I mean,
Yeah, it
there
doesn't
will
look-
be some technical issues to convert, but I'm not even sure you have any technical issues
No,
to
I'm
convert.
not sure. Yeah.
Yeah. It's straightforward. Well, Jeffrey, thank you for joining us here at the studio. We'll let you go. Tomorrow's an early round, and I am sure you are looking forward to it.
Yeah, should be an exciting finish. Thanks.
Thank you, Jeffrey.
All right, let's take a look at what we have remaining here for you. We have a bloody round in Group A. As we were mentioning, Sam Sevion is on the verge of defeating Ray Robson. This knight is just a bit too strong. The rook on c5 will start collecting pawns. I do not think that this requires a lot of precision. You could take on e2 to begin with. I actually don't see anything wrong with it. and after rook takes king e3. It might not be the most accurate, but it's kind of clear that c7 will fall, and that white's position is just going to win itself somehow. You actually don't give up a2 ever. I think that if you trade the a-pawns by some miracle, the game would not be so easy to convert with the opposite color bishops and that structure on the king side. But with the pawn on a4, it's very simple. You just pick it up and then you run the a-pawn later in the game. But it might not be the only way of doing things. He's probably calculating if he can even save this h-pawn, maybe with a move like g4. If you can make g4 work, then you should probably go for it, because after rook takes king g3, black's pieces are very much stuck. You would have to go back to h1, but the bishop really doesn't have a lot of squares. But, you know, I'm a lazy chess player. I wouldn't really do that. I just take the pawn and figure it out later. It's a way of playing chess, and it's completely valid when you're up a piece.
Well, one game that is up a piece is that one, the clash between the leader, Chris Repka, and the chaser, Mishra Abhimanyu. And we were looking at the position, a horse up. Yep, that's a completely winning position. But is it?
Yes.
And that is my question to you, Alejandro.
Yes, it is.
I was looking at a couple of variations here. If you try to be active with king to c4, yes, this is probably quite easy, because I have this check on e5 later on in the game. So for example, if you try to go rook to c7, king to d6, rook to g7, and say that you're going to pick up the g5 pawn, I can just simply take, and now knight to e5 picks up one of the pawns, and that's just going to be all she wrote. But what if I go king to e3? And this is the critical position and the critical moment right now. Chris Repka is thinking, is pondering his options. If you try to do the same thing, then I'm still going to go rook to c7. Now, a very important key moment is that you cannot take on a7 with the knight, because I'm going to go rook to c5. That's going to force the king probably to go to f6 or d6, doesn't matter. And I'm going to go rook to a5. And this is, in fact, a draw. This is a draw, because you cannot move the knight, you cannot move the rook without losing the knight. And if you try to spend time to bring the king on the other side, well, in the meantime, I'm just simply going to be able to either pick up one of the pawns or exchange both pawns, and that's just going to be a technical draw. So he has to find something else. He cannot take on
the knight, I guess, right?
Yeah.
The rook c7, knight, king d6.
You can go king to d6, and now we're going to get into this position, most likely. Rook takes g5. Now I understand. It's technically a win.
It's a win.
But
it
how
takes some
difficult
time.
is it?
Yeah, it's easy.
So you're going to give a check. I'm going to drop back. You're going to probably attack my pawn. I'm going to push it.
I go check. I go knight f5. I start harassing
All
your
I need
pawns.
to do is exchange one of the pawns. Right?
You're never doing that.
That's the the problem.
That's the problem.
Yeah, that's the problem.
I'm actually going to pick up the g pawn and transition into a one king and pawn endgame somehow.
So what if I go here? You give a check. I go here. Yeah.
Yeah, the win is not immediate, right? I probably have to control your rook or something.
It's going to take a while.
It's going to take a while. It should be pretty easy, but it's not like I'm winning in 2 moves or anything like that. I probably need to maneuver around.
Yeah, yeah. But Chris Repka just saved two positions minus 5. The
incredible
last 2
things.
games.
Incredible things.
I wouldn't be surprised. Look, I wouldn't. Look, he's completely lost right now.
That is the coach optimism talking
I understand
so
that.
hard.
Yes, that is true. That is true. That is true.
Yeah, and I don't know. A knight is a knight. I don't believe the chances that he has. Let's go through the rest of Group B. I'm actually curious on what on earth is going on in this game between Titus Tramavicius and Alshan Moriadiabadi. This is the current position on the board. I don't know what's going on. So black needs to take this bishop. But either way he takes, he's going to be dropping a pawn, right? Because pawn takes before I can take on c5. I don't even have to take on c5 right away. I'm actually a little bit more scared of what happens if this pawn just runs. And if you take with this pawn, then I don't know if I trade the rooks immediately, but after knight a5 or trade the rooks, I think they're both okay. You pick up a pawn on a5, and I feel this knight is just very bad. And that the a pawn is actually more dangerous than the past b pawn, simply because my rook is already behind it, and this knight on d8 again is very bad. This smells winning for white.
It does.
And the only other option is to take.
What about rook takes before, right?
Yeah, but then I take on a5, then rook is defended by the knight.
That's still a pawn.
And that's still a pawn. As I said, there will be probably a lot of technical conversion problems in this position. I mean, white does have some problems, let's say on the b file and stuff like that. The king's not fully safe. But the knight is very bad. This king is also not very good. It's very far from the action.
And the A-pawn is extremely strong.
Yeah,
for white.
that's the thing, right? The A-pawn is actually a huge monster. It's very difficult to defend it. We know, or for those that don't know at home, knights are really bad at holding past rook pawns, either on the A file or on the H file, because knights on the rim are dim, and to blockade a H or A pawn, you must become dim. So that's that's not what knights want to do. They'd rather be blockading central pawns, but this pawn on A4 is just very far from it. And you can imagine, for example, if you take, and I force you into a situation where this is a blockading knight and this is a blockading knight, well, the knight on C4 rocks, the knight on A7 is stupid, and therefore this should be a very easy conversion for the white side. Not to mention that he's up a pawn.
And we do have a result while you were showing up this position, Alejandro. Christopher, you did in fact win his game against Sam Kanin. That was just complete destruction. I was looking through the game. Christopher just simply didn't give his opponent any chances. And I'm sure we're going to have him in the studio to present us that game.
That's a funny little opening. I haven't seen knight 3, knight f6, d4 in years. We can point it out there. Absolutely years since I've seen this opening. Not very fashionable, but it seems to have caught his opponent.
And he's going to take us through the game, I think.
Yeah, this was very one-sided. Even this position already looks lost. So we'll let Christopher Yu join us and explain that game. Certainly an important one. Let's meanwhile switch to the JJ game while we get Christopher Yu set up. And I think for the first time in a while, Black has a real threat in this position. Because this is a threat, right?
Black might actually be better right now.
That's kind of crazy, considering the way the game was going. What a time situation? 6 minutes against 10.
Well, you know your student doesn't have any problems with his time, right?
Not usually, not usually, but sometimes he gets in bad positions. But before we get into deep analysis on this one, we do have Christopher Yu with us. He's won an important game. Topsy-turvy event there. Christopher, tell us a little bit about this game and some of the others so far in the event.
Yeah, I'm pretty happy with how my game went. Yesterday was rough. I lost a winning position, but I'm very happy to bounce back.
How did you bounce back psychologically from that loss yesterday? What did you tell yourself, let's say at night, yesterday?
I wasn't really psychologically in the right place, but I still managed to focus and play good chess.
Excellent. So let's see that good chess on display in today's game.
Where did you feel you had a strong advantage already in today's game?
Even after bishop e7 in the opening.
That's very early.
Yeah.
The bishop e7 already, yeah?
I feel it's a little bit passive. Like he should try to bring his bishop to b4 or c5.
Actually, that is a very strange move.
Yeah.
Bishop e7 is strange.
Because when you play d6, the bishop is kind of boxed out by the pawn.
That's a curious decision, and it seems like you took full advantage. Bishop g4, encouraging f3.
What?
Cannot be correct.
Yeah.
I thought you were going to play f3 on purpose.
Yeah, I was confused by this decision too.
That is. And you said thank you?
Yeah.
a6, queen e3. And it just feels like Black is getting no space at all in this game. f4, f5 is coming.
Yeah.
Yeah, this was a disaster for the opening.
This is how I play bullet on chess.com.
With white, right?
Yes.
With white, of course. Yeah, this fell apart very quickly for him, and no recovery, right? I mean, his king's still stuck in the center, no coordination. This is going to be a threat one day.
Yeah.
Yeah, this is just terrible. And this helps you out a little bit, but hey, this is just completely hopeless, yeah?
Yeah.
Okay.
Big game for you, Christopher. Who do you have tomorrow in the final round?
Abhimanyu Mishra.
Oh, that's a big battle.
Battle of the teenagers.
Yeah.
How are you going to approach that game?
Just like any other game, try to play good chess.
Well, we're definitely looking forward to that one, that big clash. Thank you very much, Christopher, and we'll see you tomorrow.
Thank you.
Certainly a little bit of rivalry there between the youngsters. It's hard not to compare them. as they are the closest in age in the tournament. Of course, the youngest one being 13, Christopher just turning 15. So very young grandmasters that we have here in the Spring Classic. It'll be a pleasure to watch them grow up to be mature chess players, and they are on their way thanks to some of these tournaments. All right, what else we got, Cristian?
Well, actually, I was looking at the game of your student, Alejandro, and I was checking with the engine as well. He's completely winning.
That's crazy.
He's completely winning.
He had such an unpleasant position. How did this bishop get to b5?
So I think you left it somewhere around here after the move rook to f6.
I didn't like his position.
He's lost. That it's for good reason, Alejandro, because he's lost. But he's lost after this not so easy move, in my opinion. Knight to e2. So you want to bring this knight to f4. Now, that blocks the entrance of this rook, also setting up some very, very nasty threats with knight to h5, right? You have to move this rook away, and that's going to allow the other rook, the rook on a5, to land on f5 with devastating consequences. This is going to lead to a completely devastating attack on the 7th rank, for example, like this. Now, after knight to e2, you're kind of in trouble. Because if you try to go rook to f1, once again, knight f4 is the ideal square for the knight because it just controls the f-file so well.
Yeah.
Wherever you keep your rook, either on f6 or on f1, is going to control that rook, this knight on f4. This is going to allow white to build up his attack. This is all she wrote. +5 by the engine, completely devastating attack in the endgame. And instead of that, he went the opposite way. He played the move knight to a4. Now this is already a problem, because after bishop to c6, black at least has equalized, according to the engine, from an objective point of view. But in my opinion, from a practical point of view, black is the one on the offensive right now. Knight to c5, rook takes bishop to b5, first of all, activating the bishop, b3, rook to f2, g4, and now we have this rook to f3, followed by the idea of putting the bishop on f1 and setting up this mating net against the king on h4. And we have the move knight takes e4. The only saving grace right now for white would have been g5 to try to create some space for the king. Unfortunately, he did not do that. He played the move knight takes e4. And right now, if I'm just simply playing the easy move, rook takes e3, it seems like white's position is just simply collapsing. The idea being that if you try to go knight to d6,
yeah, that looks very logical.
I'm going to go rook to f3. How do you continue? Your king is extremely weak, and it doesn't seem like you have a good way to get it out from this.
The main problem is that rook b3 is coming, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, rook b3 is a very serious threat.
So if you take on b5, I can take on b5. I think I can also take on b3, right?
Maybe there's some knight c3.
No, b3, knight c3 forces the trade of the rooks. This might be equal. But I'm just simply going to keep both rooks on the board, take with the pawn on b5. All my pawns are protected. All your pawns are not protected.
Yeah.
You're going to lose at least a couple of them, this pawn on b3 and the pawn on d4. This is simply a very difficult endgame for white. So
what if you go knight d6?
Knight g3, right?
Or knight d6 is fine.
Okay, yes.
Rook e3, knight d6, rook f3, knight f5.
Right, knight to f5. Now, the problem with knight f5 is that I'm just simply going to play normal move. And how do you activate your rook?
Yeah, it's kind of a funny thing because I was trying to give you checkmate, but this bishop on b5 actually does a great job. And let me just point out that the move rook b5 probably fails. I assume you take with the pawn.
Yes.
Rook c6, f6.
f6.
Yeah, f6, rook c7. And I'm trying to mate you on the g7 square. But the endgame after rook f5, pawn takes, king takes.
Your king is all the way to the wrong side.
Yeah, it's just completely off on the wrong direction. And you're losing d4 with check. And if you're not losing d4 with check, you're losing b3. So that's two extra pawns and a completely winning endgame.
What a turnaround.
96 on the board.
Morandi. 96 is on the board.
And
we expect rook to f3.
Yeah, this is an easy one to play, right? Because
so.
rook f7 is coming. There's not a lot of ways to defend that.
I think so, yes.
And then white makes some move, and they make move 40.
Yeah.
And that's an important detail because Ali Morandi will have all the time in the world to sit down and realize that he is not playing for a draw anymore, that the tables have turned, and he sits in a very, very good position. Hopefully he can convert that one and make it 2 in a row as he defeated Robert Hungaski yesterday. Okay, very bloody round all around. So many decisive results. Let's recap a little bit. The only 2 games the 3 games that I've actually finished. we have, this one has not finished, but we can gaze upon Hans Niemann against Darius Zvierch while I go through the others. Nishnik did defeat Hakobian. Sorry about this. Dragoon Kamil lost to Jeffrey Shong. Christopher Yu, as we mentioned, beat Sam Hanin. And we have this position on the board between Darius with the black pieces and Hans. Material, technically speaking, is equal because 3 pawns are worth more or less a piece, and you can count them out. White has 3 extra pawns. But objectively, I think the position is just completely lost for the white side. And the difference in power, specifically this knight and this bishop on d6, are doing a great many more things than the pawns will ever do. The pawns are not going to be attacking anybody. They're blockaded. They're actually weaknesses. And the moment that black can start collecting them, the game will be over. For now, I think black's plan is pretty clear. He wants to put the king on f6, or maybe h6, but I think king on g6 makes more sense. He actually went this way, which I'm a little curious about. I would have gone king g7. But at the end of the day, you defend the pawn on f6 with your king, and you double on the g file, and you just say, I have more pieces than you do, therefore I can attack more targets than you can. And it will be a winning angle. Of course, I cannot go to rook g8 because bishop takes, but I'll manage to do this some way, like rook here. And I have all the time in the world to put my rooks in the g file if I felt like it, because white just has no threats. This structure is stuck, this pawn is stuck, this pawn is stuck. Your only way of opening up the position is going to be with the move a4. But I have a feeling, even if you do get the move a4 in, it doesn't actually come with a threat. I can ignore a takes b5 for a very, very long time. And I cannot imagine Darius not converting this one, especially because he's currently on move 40. He's actually made time control with 45 seconds left, which is not what coach wants to see. But, you know, he made time control.
Enough.
That's enough.
That's enough. Yeah.
It's plenty. So we're going to leave that one there. Lenderman against Antipov. I peeked at the engine to check out the evaluation of this. It's surprisingly even. I would have thought that white had a pull, but the engine doesn't really care about these pulls things. This is just a draw. Even though white is to move, and you have moves like e6, for example, the engine is completely unfazed by it, says this game should end in equality. But I think it is also clear that it's Lenderman, from a practical point of view, that is pressing in this position. Material's even, but this king on e8 is a little bit weak. You might be wondering, why not the move e6?
So let's see, e6 I take probably.
Yeah, you take, and then you just run.
King f8.
Yeah, and it's, or you run immediately, I'm sorry. This is probably the harder move to find, but you can actually run immediately.
Wait, so if you take and take king f8, it's just lost, or?
Yeah, I'm going to point out the difference. If you take king f8 and you go king f5, apparently this is a very strong threat and you're getting mated. But
so you have to keep the pawn on f7 to guard
right.
that g6 square.
You basically guard the g6 square with the pawn, and you're able to play rook g3. As this is a crucial game just finished. Sam Sevion has defeated Ray Robson, and that is just unbelievable for the standings. We're going to have Sam obviously come down and explain what happened there in that game.
Alejandro, bad news for yourself.
I don't like bad news.
Bad news. Unfortunately, Lima Randy, after knight to d6, did not find the move rook to f3. Very strangely, took on b3, allowing rook takes f7.
I think he just didn't think he was better.
That is one of the problems.
Yeah,
you are on the defensive end the whole game, and then suddenly it changes, right? You understand that something changed, but you don't understand that you are now in pole position to win the game. You are now winning. So you cannot make that mental adjustment, and you only look for the ways to make a draw. And I think this is exactly what he's doing. He's just trying to find ways to exchange pieces and just simply make a draw. But after rook takes f7, king to g6, I can keep the rook on f4, and that should be enough for equality. I can even allow you to get your bishop to f1, threaten the checkmate for the moment, but right now I'm just simply going to give you checks forever because you cannot go on the f-file. That's just going to be a win for white. Your bishop on f1 is hanging. So after rook takes b3, we're expecting rook takes f7. It doesn't really make sense to do anything else in the position outside of maybe knight takes b5.
Knight
takes b5,
yeah,
knight takes f7, but not keeping contact with this bishop doesn't feel right.
No, I agree. It would be a strange move for me to play. I mean, I think...
And he took rook takes f7.
Yeah,
is
rook
on
takes
the board.
f7 looks very logical. And I think you go king g6 automatically. And
Rook
then
e7 or rook
rook
f4.
e7. Yeah, this is bound to end for a draw, I think.
Yeah,
Mm-hmm.
yeah. So that one was the breaking news. And also in this game, we were looking at it from the beginning of the endgame, and black just had, if I remember correctly, a pawn up.
Yeah, he's a pawn up here.
B takes a4, rook takes a4. Now, black has a pawn up, a very powerful bishop, the more active pieces, and it seems like it's heading into a very easy win, right? This rook on g1 is bound to the defense of the pawn on g4. This rook, probably you could put it on c7, defend the 7th rank, because that could potentially be your only weakness as black in the position. And it seems like the position is just simply dominant for black. Look where we are right now. Things have changed.
Well, he's still up a pawn, but that's
He is still up a pawn, but my pieces are so active, and the structure is actually not that mobile. So you have 5 connected. Yeah, I can count. 5 connected. But these 5 connected are, and I think they're actually going for a repetition. It seems like they're quickly just following up this line. King to d4, rook to g4. We might see a draw. By the way, king c5.
And they have finished. They have actually
Yep.
agreed to a draw. It has to be a
That's
bit of
a huge miss.
Yeah, that's a bit of a disappointment there for Raja.
Huge miss for Harshit, who once again played a good game. Even yesterday, he got in trouble out of the opening, but then defended very well, and then lost in actually the final move. Before he made his final move, it was still a draw. But due to time trouble situation and unfortunately bad form, he lost that game.
I mean, you get tired, right? I mean, these games are
Very
so long.
disheartening.
Yeah, very disheartening. Not a good tournament for Raja. It feels like he started badly, wasn't able to recover. The few chances that he's gotten, he really hasn't taken advantage of. And certainly a tough tournament for him. He'll definitely try to bounce back in later events. Let's take a look at this game between Elshan Moriadiabadi and Titus Tramavicius. It has simplified into a position where white is up a pawn, but that is not even the, the main worry of black. It's the fact that more of them are falling. Now the extra pawn does a great job because the pawn on e3 covers against any check. So his king is super safe, which allows the rook to just go around and pick up stuff. Specifically, I'm going to pick up the e6 pawn. And currently, black has a pretty ugly choice. You could go king g6 and lose this pawn, after which you have to defend it with the rook. But then the rook wins the other pawn. And you still could defend with the move rook c5. But at this point, your king's going nowhere and your rook is almost zugzwang. It'll be time to find a win somewhere around here. I have the feeling that the move rook a7 maybe was not the most accurate, but I'm not really sure how to win this. It feels winning, especially with the king here.
Well, so what do you play after rook a7?
I was going to just go rook c5. And I'm assuming that this is won, but I just haven't figured out how.
So what if I just try to triangulate you, king to g3?
Yeah, I could. I mean, I have to pass, right? I think the only move is rook d5. What else can I do?
Right.
Ah, but here I go rook e7, and you cannot defend this pawn
Precisely,
at all. Yeah,
yeah.
you actually get zugzwang, which is pretty sad for black.
Yeah.
Yeah, but I mean, there must be a way. There must be multiple ways of winning.
So you can go. Let's look at that position after king to g3. You can go rook to c3.
Yeah, you
And
can
now
go.
I'm going to go king to f2, and this is what I meant by triangulating you. King to f2, rook to c5 to defend the pawn on a5, and now king to f3.
Yeah, and then you might have to start wasting tempo with the h6 pawn, but.
But then I'm going to continue doing the same.
Yeah, I can actually do the same thing forever, and eventually you will actually lose.
And the key is that once you go king to h6, you're too far away from the e6 pawn, and I go rook to
Rook
a6,
a6, yeah.
and the game is over.
The game is absolutely over. Yeah, so we expect pretty easy conversion here from Elshan. They have reached move 40. You put the king on the last rank with king f8 or any move like that, you are totally lost. So you really don't want to be playing those kind of moves, but not a lot of choices at the moment here for Titus. I expect him to go down in this one. He's been very luckless, in my opinion, in this tournament, Titus has.
He has.
Getting some good positions and, you know, through his own volition, I'm not going to lie. I mean, some of this were really his fault, especially against Hongaski. Being careless there, taking no time at all, and blundering a full piece. Titus could have easily one or two more points, I feel, from this tournament, considering the positions he's gotten and the strength that he has. but not on form, a little unlucky here and there, and I feel that he's going to go down in this game. So that leaves us with 5 remaining games. Antipov, as we mentioned, we think is drawing against Lenderman, and Dariush, they're going to think here for a while, I guess, because...
he just made time control. I know Hans played probably extremely quickly king for h2. He plays very fast this game. I think he still has maybe even more than an hour with the addition of extra 30 minutes.
He actually does. He has a... no, not quite an hour, but he has 37 minutes.
Wow.
Still to go. So Dariush is going to sit down and think how he can make progress. I mean, I refuse to believe that this is some sort of fortress. I mean,
no, it cannot.
It cannot possibly be. Right, chess would be wrong if that were the case, and chess is not wrong.
Well, somehow you're going to get one of the rooks to g4, right?
Yeah, I don't know. I mean, I want to start with the king going to f6, or even leaving it on g6, because you don't really want. You're not really afraid of these checks on g3, right? You go king f6, and the moment your rook steps up to g5 or something along those lines, this knight starts hopping around. I go knight d2, attack that rook. I go knight e4. I start taking on c3. Of course, you need to be careful. It's still a technical task ahead. But I have the feeling that it is winning. On the other hand, you could actually maybe transfer stuff. This bishop maybe should go to f6. Not in this position.
And you can also just start with the rook on g7, so that whenever you give this check on g3, I can meet you on the g file with my rook.
And maybe this is just better technique, right? Well, this is what we talk about, leaving as few counter chances possible to your opponent, and then transferring the king, then playing rook g4, then maybe transferring the other one to g7. I don't know. I haven't really figured out how you make the killing blow.
And I think it's extremely important to point out the fact that I also have the idea of potentially opening up the position on the queen side with a move a5. I have one extra break in the position as black, while white doesn't really have that option.
Yeah, I think a5 will come at some point, but even just putting pressure on the pawns that are currently sitting in dark squares and trying to force g3, I think if black forces the move g3, it's a nice strategical concession for the white side, because the king on h7 will feel a lot safer, that no rook is going to harass it through the g file. The g pawn is going to be quite weak for the rest of the game, as this is a dark square bishop, and it's going to be targetable when this knight lands on e4. So again, some work to be done, perhaps a lot of work to be done here by Dariush, but there's no question in my mind that this is a winning endgame for the black pieces. Maybe you should even just not even go for that. Just go bishop e7, put this knight on d6, and then go bishop f6. Notice the knight on d6 defends f5. And just start attacking stuff, right? I think that if you double on the c file, you're going to run out of pieces to defend c3.
And he played a move.
He played knight b2, which is absolutely bizarre. But it might be very concrete as well.
So rook to g3, probably.
I guess you go rook g3. I don't really know what else you could do. And you could always go back here with black, but I assume you want to go here?
Is this really what he wants to do?
I don't know why you would play knight b2 if you're not going to go... Although maybe here, because it's rook g3 specifically, as opposed to any other rook move, maybe here you go rook g7.
Or rook to c4.
Ah.
Because now you're threatening to take on f4, and that's a problem. If I manage to take that pawn on f4, the game is over.
Yeah, this pawn is central to white's defense.
The only way to defend it is to go rook f3, and I really don't want to do this.
No,
now
but
you can go knight a4.
Now I go knight a4, you don't have the counterplay on the king side, and you start taking on c3.
The game is over.
The game is absolutely over. You don't even have rook c1 because
So
bishop
rook to
f4.
g3 is a bad move. Let's try to do a better move.
I don't know if it's a bad move, right? I mean, where else do you go here?
Rook e3, I guess.
Yeah, but the thing about rook e3 is it comes with no threat at all, so...
No.
I can go knight a4.
I'm just
Actually-
barely hanging on.
Actually, I'm going to go knight d1. That's kind of a funny move, yeah?
That is a funny move.
Because if you take on d1, the point is the bishop f4 check actually picks up a whole rook. Even if it picked up just the exchange, it's winning. But rook g3, I have rook g7. And I think you do lose a full... Do you actually lose the full rook?
Yes, rook to g3,
you take
rook
on
takes
c3.
c3.
You take c3, yeah, of
It's
course.
a problem.
It's a problem. And then you take this rook. Yeah, this looks like you cannot go to e3. But you don't really want to go to f3, right? Because knight a4 is also an issue. Maybe knight b2 just kind of works tactically, that somehow the rook doesn't have any good square.
So rook to f3, let's kind of finish
Yeah,
it
rook
up.
f3, but knight a4.
Now knight a4, and if you go rook to c1, I can go rook to c4. By the way, I
The
think
thing
a move has been played.
The thing about rook c1 is that you always run into bishop b4.
Also bishop takes b4.
Yeah, also bishop. I mean, not to say that rook c4 is not winning. I think it was completely winning, but rook c4, bishop b4 just finishes the game.
Everything seems to be hanging. Yeah,
Yeah, everything just
Yeah.
hangs. So he does go rook g3. I think when you analyze it a little bit deeper, it is the only logical move in the position. And here the question is, how do you proceed? Because rook c4 actually, once you see rook c4, I think it's difficult not to play it, because it is a counterplay preventer. The rook attacks the pawn, and because this loses the rook on g5, I mean, you could give up the exchange, but who cares? You'll be down a rook. Because you take the square away from the rook on g3, you pretty much collect stuff, right? You start collecting f4, you start collecting c3.
No, it feels like rook c4 just finishes the game, almost finishes the game.
Yeah,
Unless we're missing something very obvious.
maybe you just move the king somewhere so that bishop f4 is not check, like king h1, let's say.
Okay.
I don't know if h1 is a good square, but I can just take, you have to go rook gf3. I imagine this is the only reason you play this. And I happily give up the f5 pawn, because the f5 pawn was the only source of counterplay that you had. Like, the whole thing was that the pawn on f5 is weak. The best thing you can do with a weakness is to give it away. And after king g7, all of white's issues remain. And I think black solved all of his issues. You solved the problem with the f5 pawn. This bishop is now a monster. You're getting back rank checkmated all the time. Maybe because of that king g1 was a better move. But this will fall eventually. This knight on b2 will return. And white can't afford to trade pieces. But everything's on the f file. You are bound to trade pieces, and this just looks terrible for Hans. I really don't think you can save this. But still, Darius is a few moves away. He has to find a few moves accurately in order to convert this one. So rook g3 on the board. We expect rook c4. We also think that there might be other winning moves. It's not. We're not really saying that this is the only idea to win this position. But it is certainly a very logical way of trying to win this position. Probably other sane moves like king h6 and bishop e7 are winning, but at this point you're trying to finish the guy. We've seen so many games in this tournament specifically where players were about to finish their opponent off, and they kind of lost their way, right? They didn't finish them off. They didn't really give them the killing blow, the coup de grace, and we ended up in kind of messes where sometimes the game completely turned around, and you don't really want that for Darius, who's actually been on the victim side of that, specifically against Camille Dragoon in a completely won position on round 1 with a weird material balance, queens against 2 rooks. A lot of perpetual that he never should have.
One player that was on the positive side of that scenario, Alejandro, is the leader in the B group, Repka, who is defending, or at least trying to defend, a losing endgame. But I don't think this one is going to go very far, because the conversion, and I want to give kudos to Black, to Abhimanyu, for finding and technically squeezing the position as he is doing right now, because after rook to g8, this is just an easy transition. After knight to d4, I'm attacking your pawn on f3. You cannot go f4. You can never go f4, because once you play f4, I'm going to sidestep you with e4. That's going to create a passed pawn, and that's just going to promote. King to d3. And now my threat is very simple. You can try to go g4, but now I'm just simply going to take on f3. And this is going to make the easy and quick transition into a technically winning pawn endgame. You can take, I take, and I'm just simply the first one to queen my pawn. You're one move short, and after that it's just game over. e2, g6, e1. I'm gonna get that queen. You're going to get all the way to g7, just one more square, and you would be in an equal situation. But after queen to e6, the game is over. I'm going to go queen to g8. That's going to be all she wrote. So it seems like Abhimanyu knows that. White played the move rook to f3, king to d3, and by the way, his whole concept for the last 5 moves is to get into this situation. Knight to d5, king to d5, rook to g5, king to c4, circling around like this, and rook to e3. I really like this move. And by the way, at this point, Chris did have the option of playing this move g4, and that would have given him an extra tempo. I'm not 100% sure why he didn't take this extra tempo, because this is your only compensation and the only source of counterplay in the position for white. This G pawn, this pass pawn, you have to push it as fast as possible and try to create some sort of problems for your opponent. He did not do that, and now he's about to resign. And that's going to mean that Abhimanyu catches Chris Repka at the top of the leaderboard.
Wow, what a great result that would be for the youngster. Yeah, but this is just totally over.
Completely over.
We expect King D3 resigns, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
King D3, and you cannot defend against Rook takes F3.
Wow, what a round, because the two leaders actually go down both in the A and in the B group, with Sam Sevion taking out Ray Robson and actually setting us up for a great round tomorrow. Actually, I'm wondering, I'm not guaranteeing that we have graphics for tomorrow's pairings, but I would actually love to see them if we do have them, and they say they're working on it.
Well, we know that Christopher Yu is going to play with the black pieces against Abhimanyu.
Yeah, that's a big
Big
one.
clash.
Might even be the
Group
game
B.
of the day, to be honest.
Also, Chris Repka will have the black pieces. I'm not 100% sure against who, but he does have the black pieces.
Well, who hasn't he played?
Maybe Stremovicius. I believe it is Stremovicius.
I think that sounds right. I don't think they've played against each other.
No,
yeah.
so he's going to have black against Stremovicius. Abhimanyu is going to have white against Christopher Yu, who, by the way, with a victory, catches up with Abhimanyu.
Is that true?
I believe so.
Wow. Somehow I thought that Christopher was behind a
No,
little bit.
he's 1 point behind Abhimanyu, and he won.
Wow. Okay, so that would be amazing for what could happen on Group B. It's still a lot to play for tomorrow.
But also in Group A.
And in Group A, it's the same thing, right? We have Ray Robson there, who was at the top, loses to Sam Sevion, allows not just Sam to pass him, but also Ilya Nishnik, by defeating Aram Hakobian, takes tied pole position. So guys, remember, we have playoffs tomorrow for first place. If we need to actually play it, we have a tie for first place, we actually will play that over the board. 2 rapid games and then 2 blitz games, I think, if they follow tradition from the previous editions of the classics.
And those are so exciting. I remember,
Yeah.
I do believe it was Ray Robson against Yaroslav Zerebuch, if I'm not mistaken, in one of the playoffs.
I
it
think
was Zerebuch against somebody.
Meyer, he actually, Yaro Jerebuk, I think played a final,
Yes.
a playoff at a classic twice. I think he lost both. I think he lost to Robson, and I think he lost to Meyer.
But I know that he won with first move A3.
He did.
He
That was
won a
against Meyer.
game, and I think it was in a must-win situation.
Yeah.
And he won a game with first move A3.
Yeah, he does that, right? I think he was in a must-win situation against Shirov and played the move B3 and move 1.
And he won in 20
And
moves.
he won in 20 moves. Yeah, he's a funny guy like that when it comes to opening repertoires. So what else do we got?
Most games are about to finish. Alejandro.
Actually,
Yeah.
we might no, we're not going to finish the round before commentary today, but it came close.
Absolutely. One important game is this one, of course, the one between Alex Lenderman and Mishra Antipov. And I'm trying to find ways for black to mess it up. So for example, you cannot take on f7. I think this might even be, no, it's not losing. You're still within range. Yes, you are losing, actually, if you do this. But, in fact, after rook f7, this move comes on the board. And this actually would be quite funny. King to e8, you have to take, king f8, and apparently this is just a draw.
Really?
Yes, because you're going to take this, I'm going to take this, you're going to take this,
King f6.
and I'm just going to go king f6.
Yeah, it's very annoying, this king f6 move, because
And what if you go here?
I think you're in time.
You're just simply
You're
in time.
actually in time. H4.
This is a one-tempo situation.
It's a one-tempo situation, but you just take on d5, and you're still somehow okay.
You don't want to go h5, because that's going to allow my king to go back and catch the pawn. So you want to start with king to f5, but then it's just a race,
Yeah, and somehow the race is a draw, which is kind of the crazy part.
and it's a draw. Pak.
It's hard to see.
Oh, it's very difficult to see. And this is precisely why the players are calculating for so long right now. So rook to e3 was the last move.
So you could go rook f7. And
You could go rook f7.
And it's
yeah.
all fours, right? Rook f7, rook f3.
You have to take.
You have to go king g6. That's clear. You have
Can you
to
take here? No, this is
No,
losing.
no, because d6, right?
Losing.
Yeah, yeah, just completely
instantaneously
lost.
losing.
No, no, this is all force. You have to take on f7.
And he must have calculated it from afar.
Yeah.
Before he played this move, rook to e3.
It's also kind of clear that you have to go e6.
By the way, at this point, you don't have any other moves as white because
No, this is
you
clear.
don't have a square
Yeah, you don't
to
have a
still
square.
continue defending this pawn. You have to take. It does seem like you have to take. I mean,
I don't see any gain from triangulating or trying to be cute or clever.
the engine
right?
says king to g4, but I
It's
mean,
probably
this
all a
doesn't
draw
make
to
any
it, right?
sense. Yeah,
It's probably all a draw to it.
yeah.
Yeah, this is fascinating, actually.
Quite an interesting endgame, I have to say.
This is a cool endgame. Rook e3, rook f7, rook f3, king g6 takes is
And what
very
if you
cool.
start with the move e6?
Then I have to take. This one
Take, I take.
clear, yeah? And then king d6, I guess?
King c6.
Was there something wrong with king d6? No.
No. It's still a draw.
Takes and king takes e6. And
But then I take on h4. How easy is this? Because you are cut. If you would have your king on g7, this would be an easy draw.
yeah, the thing is that f and h are so many times just a draw.
Yeah.
That I'm wondering if you can just go back with the king. And
But your king is not here.
I know, but you're not going to push that pawn that fast. I go king d7, I go e5. I make some pretense that your pawn is really not going to queen. I go king e7, force you to an awkward square. And
Yes.
you want to keep me cut, right? You want to
Yeah.
go rook f5, but at this point you're running into king e6, h5, rook e1. I'm starting to make some threats. You're going to have to let me in into the king side. You can't keep cutting me forever.
No, no, I have to
And
go
that
king
should
to
be a
f8,
draw.
and you can go king on
E7,
e7 or
rook
just simply give a
g1,
check. Yeah, yeah, you're
Yeah.
probably in time. Black is probably going to hold this one, but let's not forget Mishra Antipov is really having a very difficult event.
Yeah.
You're having the worst event, one of the worst events of your life. And then you're forced to defend, let me show it to you, this position out of the opening. Sorry. This position out of the opening.
Yeah, it's not a lot of fun, I got to say.
Well, you're just simply a pawn down.
Yeah.
You're a pawn down, and you have to defend. By the way, at this point, Lenderman had an hour and 28 minutes on the clock. So he definitely knew what he's doing. Mishra Antipov only had 53 minutes on the clock. So you're having the worst event, and you're under this tremendous pressure. And he kept his cool, and it seems like he's going towards potentially a draw in this one.
Well, good for him, actually. Sometimes you feel for the players, right? And we do see the move e6, f takes e6, d takes e6 on the board, after which we expect the move king d6. But king c6, as you mentioned, Cristian, might also be a draw. Fascinating little endgame here between Lenderman and Antipov, but the fact that he was able to bring it back really from the dead is quite surprising. Let's take a look at... Oh, this is a cool little situation here between Arman Mikhailian and JJ Ali Morandi, because rook b1 was played, knight takes b5 was played, and you could automatically take this this knight, but if you take the knight, you start running into some checks, and this is clearly a draw, but I'd rather take white. But actually rook b1 might be an even more accurate move. You do give up a knight and a pawn with check, but the resulting position after checking g7, because of this powerful threat of rook h1 checkmate, it might force you. It might force you to give up everything back with a check, because I think the only move you play, you could keep giving checks here on the a file forever. It doesn't really matter. I'll go between g6 and g7. I'm not going to budge. And the only way to get out of this checkmate is to actually play the move g5. But after g5, I take, which is a fork, so you have to take back, and I take on b5 with check. And this game is dead. This pawn on d4 actually doesn't even survive a couple more moves. And
Doesn't it? King g4?
yeah, well, I mean, if you play a rook on a4, yeah, we can.
Rook a4.
Yeah, but we can just sign the score sheets here, king g6, and
The problem is you cannot get the king to e4.
yeah,
If you would be able to get the king to e4, the game would still be going on for a little while.
It would go on, probably still a draw, but we would be talking about a game. But with the king on g6 here and the king on g4,
Yeah, there's no way to get the king
there's
to
no way.
e4.
Yeah, I'm immediately threatening perpetuals. Actually, I'm threatening kind of checkmates. Yeah, not
Close to
really,
checkmate, yeah.
Not really, but like
Rook g5, rook
yeah,
h5.
rook g5, and you start trying, but none of this is gonna result in a checkmate. So rook b1, a very nice, precise move here by JJ. I think this game is just bound to be a draw. Repka against Niemann, it took him quite a while, but king d3 was played, and we expect Wait. How did this happen? He went check. Actually, it went through the other way,
Yeah.
which is
It doesn't change much.
it doesn't change anything. Yeah, rook a8 played, and I assume that you take on
Rook
f3
takes
with
f3.
the rook or the knight or whatever, and then you expect your opponent to resign.
Yeah. Yeah, no. I mean, I think rook takes f3 is the easiest just because rook a3, king e4, hide
Yeah.
the king, and it doesn't. You cannot exchange the rooks on f3. And
Yeah, it
if
doesn't really matter at this point, right?
If you want to play this piece down, well, be my guest, but it's not going to be fun.
It's not going to be very long either. All right, Nishnik won. Hans is in trouble, but I'm actually wondering what happened here. He did go rook g7, actually. I didn't like that move as much because of rook g5 and takes. It keeps Hans in the game, and Dariusz only has 9 minutes. And this game has finished as we expected. Abhimanyu Mishra currently sitting in first place, tied with the opponent that he just vanquished. Chris Repka. What an interesting tournament we're going to have as a finish in Group B and also in Group A, but I'm particularly interested if young Abhimanyu, 13 years old, can rack up a Spring Classic victory in the final round. But of course, he's going to be with the black pieces
By the way,
against Christopher Yu.
yes, no, he is playing with the white pieces.
Oh, white pieces, I'm
He's
sorry.
playing with the white pieces against Christopher Yu, so he has a chance. Look, this was almost a must-win situation for him. Because
absolutely.
With the black pieces.
Absolutely.
And he delivered.
Oh, yeah.
The kid is on 5.5 out of 6 points in the last 6 rounds.
That's pretty good.
He's going completely berserk at this point, and he's about to win the tournament.
Well,
What were you doing at 13 years of age, Alejandro?
I was
Were you winning Grandmaster Invitational events?
I was getting my international master title, and I thought that was pretty good. But apparently that's no good anymore. You have to be a GM and winning those events.
Yeah, I think I was a FIDE master at 13 years of age. Not even an international master yet.
Man, tough times.
The kids are getting stronger and stronger. And
Man, there was a saying that you have to take them young and beat them while you still can. But I mean, the guy's 13, and I can't beat him anymore. What am I supposed to do now? Very strong Abhimanyu really has impressed the chess world. Just at the age that he made his title of 12, it's unbelievable. I mean, there's no way I could imagine being that strong at such an early age.
by the way, Alejandro, I'm going to give you some bad news. The advantage is not that extensive anymore. It's not minus 3.5 as it was a couple of moves ago. It's only minus 1.7.
Yeah, it doesn't feel that improving the structure for white with h takes g5 was absolutely necessary. And I was talking about this earlier, that if I had to say what is Dariusz's main weakness in chess,
Conversion.
it's conversion.
Yeah.
So for some reason, he locks up, starts spending way too much time. And you can start seeing that with the 6 minutes and 30 seconds left for him as he's played the move knight a4. Very concrete. And I don't know. You play rook f3, I assume. You have to defend this guy. Kind of have to defend the pawn.
I don't. That's the thing. I don't have to defend that.
You don't have to
I can
defend.
go g3 if I want.
That is not a move I expect.
I'm not expecting him to play that move. But it's a move that you can make.
And if you take
Rook c1.
knight e4,
And now I'm invading. I go rook c6.
really? And if I go h4?
If you go h4, you're still close to winning. But I will take on h4. You take on f4, I go king g2.
Yeah, I get it. Yeah, this is not so clear, actually. These pawns are suddenly...
Gets a bit topsy-turvy,
yeah,
right?
I mean, I get a little bit worried here. H5 is a problem. G6 may be a problem. This pawn is hanging.
And you don't want to see a race with 2 minutes on the clock.
No races. So he's actually played rook f3 and king g6 was played. Maybe he was going to play king g6 anyway. I have to agree, Cristian. Not as easy. That being said, I have kind of a clear plan here.
Rook e8, rook e7, rook c7, right?
Yeah, rook somewhere on the 8th rank that allows me, for example, rook e8, to transfer the rook to c7.
So let's see, are you in time to do that?
In time. I don't really know what white's doing in the meantime. Which has been the issue for the past, 20 moves, right? This bishop on e6 is not really threatening anything.
I'm going to tell you.
All right.
I'm just going to sit and wait for you.
All right, let's go. I don't know. How do
I'm
you
going
want
to
to
go g3.
All right, go rook e8.
I need to defend that pawn on f4. king h3 or king g2 or king wherever.
Whatever. All right, rook here.
This is already equal after bishop c8.
What?
This,
What if I go
at least
rook
according to the engine,
What if rook c7?
is completely equal. Rook c7 and rook e3.
Ah, stupid engines. Yeah. You pick up the bishop, and actually, again, the knight is offside on a4, and I have some powerful passed pawns, especially this one.
Yep.
Yeah, this is actually a mess. So
So if you don't have this plan, rook e7, rook c7, which looks like the most natural thing in the position, then what is your plan?
yeah, I don't know, because this knight is on a4 just to attack a pawn, right? So it's not like you're doing very much. And
Are
I
you
think the
gonna
move
go knight
g3.
b6, knight c4?
Yeah, but I just came from c4, right?
Yeah, but maybe you want to transfer the knight to e4. I don't know. It just looks like a beautiful position for the knight.
This knight on a4 looks really bad. This knight was on e4. I think all of these variations work. So I think step number 1 is transferring this guy, but it also feels that the move, sorry, didn't mean to do that. It also feels like the move knight a4 in that case was a little bit of a step in the wrong direction.
He played the move g3. So right now, 7 minutes and ticking.
Yeah, this is not so easy, you know? Why is he making his life so hard?
And by the way, it seems like Morad Yabadi is about to finish Stoimovicius off in
Let's
that
take a look at that
endgame.
position.
Yeah, it just seems that, well, you simply don't have any moves. Right now, what Stoimovicius is playing is some sort of a stalemate. He's trying to get some sort of a stalemate in the position.
Can we take a look at Cristian's board there to see what's going on? Yep.
There we go. So I think we are in this position. We saw the king land on f7. We were thinking about what will happen if the king will stay on g6, and we saw that those Zuzwang situations. Instead of that, we saw this rook to a6, h6. Once again, you have to stay connected to the defense of the pawn on e6. If you go king to e7, whoops, that's going to be a check. I'm going to pick up the pawn on h7, and that's going to be all she wrote. So he played the move h6, king to g6, h4, rook to c8, rook takes a5, so you had to give me that pawn. And now we have king to h5, rook to a6, rook to e8. This is the only thing that I can think of black is dreaming about. Some sort of, let's say, king to g3.
I know what you're trying to set up.
Check,
but I don't know what you're gonna do.
Here.
No, you can take that.
No,
rook.
but then you can just simply take it.
Even not that
I
I'm
don't
saying
see.
rook e6 is not winning, but
It probably is a win. It probably is a win.
but
Yeah, there's no stalemate.
There's
No,
just not
I don't
enough.
see the
I don't
stalemate.
see the stalemate. It feels stalemate-y because
Yeah.
of the king on h5, but you actually never cover g6 as
I
white.
don't see,
yeah, I
no,
don't see
there's
it.
no stalemate.
So you just pretty much you just push the pawn until the end. You put it all the way on a7. The rook goes back to a6 to defend it. Yeah, this is just dead.
Yeah.
Absolutely dead.
Completely dead. So Morad Yabadi is about to pick up his victory, his very important victory, actually. And what
Yeah.
else do we have? We have a couple more games. We have Lenderman. This endgame is still going on.
Yeah, as JJ did finish that off with a draw against
Yeah.
Arman Mikhailian, we had expected that for some time. Yeah, what about this endgame? By the way, we didn't actually
Not that
analyze-
much happened, actually, and I do believe that black has the option of taking on e6, and I think he's calculating this line. So take, I take. King to e8 is the only move. King to f5.
It's a little scary, I have to say,
It is.
because you lose all your pawns.
You are losing 2 pawns. So
But I guess you have king e6 and...
this is losing.
Yeah, this must be losing. But I
Probably.
think you have king e6 and on f4...
King f5.
Yeah, this is but the critical line would be a... even though this, I think, you might be a bit scared of this, no?
You are, yeah.
Yeah, like-
yeah. Why not?
Why is this a draw? h4?
So h4, I go
King
king
f5.
f5, not h5.
No, you have to...
Well, if you go here, I go here, right? This
Yeah,
is a
that's
draw.
clear.
So then what do? You can stay here, but then
But
I go to
king
f4.
and then I just take king f5, king f4.
And what if you go here? Then you go on the other side.
That's not
Easy.
super clear to me. I think I play king d6 here. It just seems like such a natural
King
move
d6
to me,
here.
yeah. Because I thought rook e6, rook d8 is lost. I mean, that was my first instinct. But king d6, and I think we get into that endgame we were analyzing already, with the rooks on.
Yeah.
But
yeah.
with the rooks on, I think, okay, I shouldn't have any real issues.
Yeah, yeah.
The pawn endgame really scares me.
At the same time, we know that Mishra Antipov, and we've seen it in previous games as well, he takes very concrete decisions very often. So he likes to calculate. He's not afraid of calculating precisely. And if he does play rook to e6, well, that kind of forces rook to d8, right? I mean, do you want to play king to g5? Probably not, right? Rook to e3, you're going to take this one. But this is the same position that we had. Right now I have e5 and I'm going to get the king to e7. We've seen this is not difficult. So we are expecting rook takes e6. This is probably going to end up in a draw. Nevertheless, Antipov down to his last 4 minutes.
Yeah, it always gets scary, bro,
I
for
really
him,
don't
right?
like what he's doing.
He's
with
just
his
taking
time.
forever.
No, his time management, this tournament specifically, has not been good.
No, not so much. It feels like he got some positions that he wanted to get. Out-prepared a few of his opponents, but when it came down to the time pressure, it didn't really look very good for him. And he's definitely let go of a lot of half points. So hopefully he can defend this one successfully, but only 4 minutes for him. All right, let's let him think here in this position, as he has a difficult choice to make between king d6 and rook takes e6. But in our studio, we have a young man, a young grandmaster who is absolutely on fire, 5.5 out of 6 in the last rounds. He is with Cristian Chirila celebrating his victory.
Thank you, Alejandro. Yes, we are indeed with a very happy victor and new co-leader of the B group, Abhimanyu Mishra. Abhimanyu, first of all, big congratulations. 5.5 out of 6 in the last 6 rounds. How did you do that?
Yeah, I mean, after losing my second game round against Ali Marandi, I just thought, okay, like it's one game, nothing. And I've been preparing for this tournament for like over 2 months, and all that preparation, like, okay, one game can go bad in the tournament, but I felt that it will eventually show.
You are playing this round against the leader of the event, the invincible man in this event. You are also playing with the black pieces. How did you approach this game? Did you see it as a must-win situation?
Yeah, I kind of saw it as a must-win situation if I was competing for first as such. But the thing is, like, when you're black, you cannot, against a very strong opponent, and if they want to make a draw of the opening, you cannot like just, you can't avoid them. You can't stop them. If you do that, you'll just lose the game right there. So I was thinking I'll just play whatever lines I usually play, and just play a game. If he plays on and we get a game, good.
And he did. And he did play on, and you guys got a game. And actually, let's take a look at that game.
Yeah, take us a little bit of the critical moments. Where did you feel you started really getting that advantage? Obviously, you're up a pawn, but the position remains very complex here.
Yeah, actually, when I was discussing it with him a few minutes upstairs ago, so he said that this was all his preparation. And he said after knight g4, engine said to play knight takes e4 for whatever reason.
No, it was not knight g4, it was knight c4.
Ah.
So he forgot his preparation.
And castle, you have knight takes e6, right?
Yes.
Yes.
Yeah, that's a big difference.
So now you're forced to exchange one pair of knights, and that's a big difference.
Ah.
Because I can put some more pressure with the rook coming to c1, rook fc1.
Yeah. That was the main reason why I didn't take e4, because I felt if I took on e4, then he has like rook fc1 with like his queenside attack is one move faster.
Mm-hmm. Yep. So he castled, and it felt like you started to take over maybe around here. Maybe he was
like, yeah,
still okay.
c5. This is still a complete draw after bishop c5, rook c5, and yeah, he missed this rook f5 move.
Uh-huh.
And I think bishop f3 is a mistake here.
Actually, why didn't he go e3?
Yeah, e3. I think there's some crazy lines like rook takes f2, but I'm not entirely sure if they work. Like bishop e7,
Queen takes e3.
queen takes e3, bishop takes a8.
Oh my goodness.
And now like rook d8 is a threat. And if you go like h6, 94, and you knight e4, and he can just give up his queen, at least.
Right. And if you have nothing with this rook, huh?
Apparently.
The king is just very safe on h1.
So now you just play h6?
Even this doesn't work, huh?
Yeah, I don't. Maybe knight g4, king h3.
Yeah, it just doesn't work. The king's fine on g2.
Yeah.
That's a funny line. Rook takes f2. I guess he got scared.
Yeah, but after e3, I mean, there were some. I think maybe black is fine here, but there's like some lines which you should avoid. Like bishop takes g2 is like the most natural move if rook takes f2 doesn't work. But I think here white has rook takes a6.
Oh yeah, that's a nice move.
And now there's like two lines: rook takes a6, b takes a6, queen c6. Because yeah, queen b3, rook d8 is mate. And now there's like rook d8, knight d8, queen b8. And I think it was king f8, a7. And yeah, if you go rook a5, queen b4, you lose.
What about bishop f3?
Bishop 3?
Bishop f3. Ah, you have queen to b4.
Okay, bishop f3 I promote.
Yeah.
Ah, you promote and that's a checkmate.
It's checkmate on e8, yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's lost actually. I don't see a defense.
And instead of, if you don't play this, if you go back a few moves, there was some issue with if you play queen b7 instead of rook takes a6. There was rook takes a8, queen takes a8, queen to a4. Just make sure you don't play queen a3 because queen takes a3, queen f8. But yeah, after queen a4, you lose your piece back. There's nothing you can do.
Right, because the threat is to trade and go rook d8. And yeah, there's actually nothing you can do about it. It's kind of sad.
And yeah, so I was planning to play something else, but it's white should be fine, I guess.
But a big mistake with bishop f3, and you took full advantage of it immediately,
yeah,
attacking
I had this
f2.
or a knight e5.
Yeah, knight e5 and
instead of knight e5, I think rook takes f3 was another move, but this also leads to some crazy variations, like rook takes f3, knight d5, I think.
Knight d5,
Knight d5, queen takes f2 check, rook takes f2, rook takes b3. And now white has knight c7. And maybe black is somehow winning here, but I couldn't see it. Like rook c8, he has ba6. Knight f2, a7.
So you have to go rook a7.
Rook a7, you have rook d2. And ba6.
And he just stays like that.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, it's hard to say that you're going to win with this pawn on a6 always being a problem.
Yeah.
Well, a lot of calculation in this game was necessary. It takes knight e5, knight e4.
And now I had this nice knight f3, queen b7 idea, but maybe queen b7, like for some reason engine doesn't like queen b7.
Don't worry about it. At this point, it says pretty much everything's winning.
Yeah,
it's already a completely winning.
Yeah, knight d4 is also like completely winning. You just take b5.
It just didn't want to be as fancy as you were, but queen b7 is definitely a good move. Don't worry about that.
Yeah, I just wanted to like finish this as quickly as possible as such, because queen, like knight d4, knight takes b5 will be winning in the long run, but against such a resourceful opponent, I didn't want to take such risks.
And if you lose the a6 pawn, then it's going to be a very difficult conversion, right?
Yes.
Yeah. Well, certainly a bunch of games won there in a row for you. Just got stopped with a draw one round ago, yesterday. Did you expect to come in and wipe out so many opponents in a row?
I didn't actually expect this, but I was just trying, and as I said before, I've been preparing for this tournament for a very long time, and I felt very confident in my preparation. And now everything is working out perfectly.
Well, you seem like a happy man, and certainly we are happy to see you make progress. Of course, all eyes on Abimanyu, the youngest Grandmaster in the history of the game.
And one final question for you, Abimanyu. Tomorrow you have a big clash against Christopher Yu, a player that probably is going to be one of your main rivals for years to come. How will you approach that game?
I'll approach it the same way I approach every game. Just try and play whatever I can do best. Well, and whatever goes on after that that's not in my control.
Absolutely. That's a very healthy attitude to have. Good luck tomorrow, and we're looking forward to see you tomorrow.
Thank you.
Yeah, bright and early, we have the round at 11 a.m. And remember, this is this is going to be a matchup that I think we're going to be seeing tons of times, as these young players will face off each other, at the very least in the U.S. Junior Chess Championship, coming back to St. Louis in July, joining the U.S. Seniors and U.S. Junior Girls, which are awesome to watch. They're very topsy-turvy games, but they always provide very, very interesting and fun games, and certainly those two players will be participating. Let's take a look at what has happened in today's round. Actually, in Group A, we only have 2 games left. Lenderman is still pushing against Mishra Antipov, but we got it wrong yesterday, but I'm going to go ahead and guarantee a draw on this one, although I hope that Mishra doesn't make me look bad. And meanwhile, Hans Niemann is still fighting for survival against Dariusz Zvierch, because I am completely biased in my commentary. I will say that he will not make it, and Dariusz will score an important point there. Meanwhile, in Group B, we actually have all of the results already done. Christopher Yu has defeated Sam Khanin. Shamor Yedebari did so against Titus Starmavicius. In the game of the day, absolutely everything to play for. Abi, as we call him, has defeated Chris Repka. and sits in first place. Meanwhile, Robert Hungaski will play against Harshid Raja. And surprisingly, we have pairings for tomorrow. Can you believe the magic of television that we have here? In the last round in Group A, great games, absolutely great games. Jeffrey Shong will be playing against Sam Sevion. Antipov will play against Kamil Dragun. Dariusz Zvierch will play against Alex Lenderman. Aram Hakobian against Ilya Nishnik. But Ray Robson against Hans Niemann. I don't even know where to put my attention here, right? Jeffrey Shong, Sam Sevion, huge game. Ray Robson, Hans Niemann, huge game.
Also, I think there's a mistake there. Aram Hakobian, I think, just played against Ilya Nishnik today. So Ilya Nishnik is actually going to play with the black pieces, but against Jeffrey Shong.
Why do they lie to us like this?
I'm not 100% sure. No, against Ray Robson.
Yeah, Nishnik's playing Robson, right?
He's playing
yeah,
Ray Robson.
We actually just had him in the studio saying that.
And Jeffrey Shong is playing Sam Sevion, so that one is correct. It means that Aram Hakobian is going to be playing Hans Niemann, right?
I think they haven't
The power of deduction.
Power of
hopefully.
deduction. Because everything looks right. I don't think Dariusz played Lenderman and Tipo was not playing against Dragoon. But yeah, I don't think Nishnik's played Robson, right? Do I remember the Robson?
No, and he
game?
did tell us that he's going to play Ray Robson tomorrow.
Yeah, but do we believe him? I'm gonna check the broadcast.
We believe him because we know that today he played Aram Hakobian. So there is definitely something wrong in
our pairings.
right? And what about the B group, Alejandro?
Do we have the B group? All right, let's take a look at the B group. Abhimanyu Mishra against Christopher Yu. We do know that one is true. Titus Starmavicius will be playing against Chris Repka. Ali Marandi will be finishing against Moria Debati. Harshid Raja, not a very lucky tournament for him, will be finishing against Arya Mikhailian. And Sam Hanin against Robert Hungaski. Of course, all eyes will be on the games of the leaders. You have them there at the top. Can Chris Repka hold against Titus Starmavicius? And what will Abi do against Christopher Yu?
Big questions that are only going to be answered here in the studio tomorrow. Don't forget, tomorrow we are starting the final round a bit earlier. The games are going to be starting at 11 a.m. Central Time. And our abbreviated show is going to start 2.5 hours later at 1:30 p.m. Also, we might see some playoffs. So join us tomorrow. Also, join our discussion on social media at #SpringChessClassic. We will answer all of your questions. Until tomorrow, I am Grandmaster Cristian Chirila with my good friend, Grandmaster Alejandro Ramirez, and we will see you tomorrow.
Can't wait. Don't miss it. The final and conclusion of the Spring Chess Classic 2022.
This has been a presentation of the St. Louis Chess Club. Any reproduction or distribution of this content without the express written consent of the St. Louis Chess Club is prohibited.